I wanted to share an idea with you that started out with a wonderful, lighthearted story somebody told me, but it has a lot to do with the journey of awakening that we're on. And it goes like this: a young couple moved into a new neighborhood, and the next morning, while they were eating breakfast, the young woman saw her neighbor hanging her wash outside on the clothesline. That laundry's not very clean, she said. She doesn't know how to wash correctly. Perhaps she needs better laundry soap. Her husband looked on, but remained silent. Every time her neighbor would hang her wash to dry, the young woman would make the same comments. About a month later, the woman was surprised to see a nice, clean wash on the line, and said to her husband, "Look, she's learned how to wash correctly. I wonder what taught her. I wonder how she learned." And the husband said, "I got up early this morning and cleaned our windows." I like to think that that's a pretty good metaphor for what we do here. We wash some windows, clear out that vision so that we might look out here and capture a vision of our life that is not filled with all the drama that most of us are so very adept at creating. Drama that is spoken to in this wonderful little excerpt from a story called A Hat Full of Sky. How many are Terry Pratchett friends? My wife lives and dies with Terry Pratchett. He's beautiful. But he was writing in this story, and this is about, some witches and that kind of befuddlery stuff. And it's talking about some of the witch families and how they're responding to Miss Level, who is the head witch. And this is some of their dialogue. She'll, speaking to the head witch, she'll get some respect when people see her moving stuff through the air. Respect is meat and drink to a witch. Without respect, you ain't got a thing. She doesn't get much respect, our Miss Level. That was true. People didn't respect Miss Level. They liked her in an unthinking sort of way, and that was it. Mistress Weatherwax was right, and Tiffany wished she wasn't. "Why did you and Miss Tick send me to her then?" she said. "Because she likes people," said the witch, striding ahead. "She cares about them, even the stupid, mean, ruling ones. The mothers with the runny babies and no sense, the feckless and the silly and the fools who treat her like some kind of a servant. Now that's what I call magic. Seeing all that, dealing with all that, and still going on. It's sitting up all night with some poor old man who's leaving the world, taking away such pain as you can, comforting their terror, seeing them safely on their way, and then cleaning them up, laying them out, making them neat for the funeral, and helping the weeping willow and the weeping widow strip the bed and wash the sheets, which is, let me tell you, no errand for the faint-hearted. And staying up the next night to watch over the coffin before the funeral, and then going home and sitting down for 5 minutes before some shouting angry man comes banging on your door because his wife's having difficulty giving birth to their first child, and the midwife's at her wit's end, and then getting up and fetching your bag and going out again. We all do that in our own way, and she does it better than me if I was to put my hand on my heart. That is the root and the heart and the soul and center of witchcraft. That is the soul and center. Mistress Weatherwax smacked her fist against her hand, hammering out her words. The soul and the center. Echoes came back from the trees in the sudden silence. Even the grasshoppers by the side of the track had stopped sizzling. "And Mrs. Earwig," said Mistress Weatherwax, her voice sinking to a growl, "Mrs. Earwig tells her girls it's about cosmic balance and stars and circles and colors and wands and toys. Nothing but toys, she sniffed. Oh, I dare say they're all very well at decoration, something nice to look at while you're working something for show. But the start and the finish is helping people when life is on the edge, even people you don't like. Stars is easy. People is hard. Wow. You hear that? Say thank you, Terry. Even the most exalted states and the most exceptional spiritual accomplishments are unimportant if we cannot be happy in the most basic and ordinary ways. If we cannot touch one another and the life we've been given with our hearts, it stays pretty bleak and pretty empty. In undertaking a spiritual life, what matters is simple. We must make certain that our path is connected with our heart. Many other visions are offered to us in this modern spiritual marketplace, you might call it. Great spiritual traditions offer stories of enlightenment, bliss, knowledge, divine ecstasy, and the highest possibilities of the human spirit. Great spiritual traditions do that. Out of the broad range of teachings available to us in the West, often we are first attracted to those glamorous and most extraordinary aspects. While the promise of attaining such states can come true, and while these states do represent the teachings in one sense, they are also one of the advertising techniques of the spiritual trade. They are not the goal of spiritual life. In the end, spiritual life is not a process of seeking or gaining some extraordinary condition or special powers. In fact, such seeking can take us away from ourselves. If we are not careful, we can easily find the great failures of our modern society. Its ambition, its materialism, and individual isolation repeated in our spiritual life. In beginning a genuine spiritual journey, we have to stay much closer to home to focus directly on what is right here in front of us, to make sure that our path is connected with our deepest love. Don Juan, in his teachings to Carlos Castaneda, put it this way: look at every path closely, deliberately. Try it as many times as you think necessary. Then ask yourself, and yourself alone, one question. This question is one that only a very old man asks. My benefactor told me about it once when I was young, and my blood was too vigorous for me to understand it. Now I do understand it. I will tell you what that question is. Does this path have a heart? If it does, the path is good. It's helpful. If it doesn't, it is of no use. When we ask it about our current path, we must look at the values we have chosen to live by. Where do we put our time, our strength, our creativity, our love? We must look at our life without sentimentality, without exaggeration, or idealism. Does what we are choosing reflect what we most deeply value? In the stress and complexity of our lives, we may forget our deepest intentions. But when people come to the end of their life and look back, the questions that they most often ask are not usually, how much is in my bank account? How many books did I write? Or what did I build? Or questions like that. If you have the privilege of being with a person who has awakened at the time of his or her death, you find the questions such a person asks are very simple. Did I love well? Did I live fully? Did I learn to let go? Did we learn to live through the changes of life with grace, with wisdom, with compassion? Have we learned to forgive and live from the spirit of the heart instead of the spirit of judgment? Letting go and moving through the life from one change to another brings the maturing of our spiritual being. In the end, we discover that to love and to let go can be the same thing. Both ways do not seek to possess. Both allow us to touch each moment of a changing life and allow us to be there fully for whatever arises next. There is an old story about a famous rabbi living in Europe who was visited one day by a man who had traveled by ship from New York to see him. The man came to the great rabbi's dwelling, a large house in a street in a European city, and was directed to the rabbi's room, which was in the attic. He entered to find the master living in a room with a bed, a chair, and a few books. The man had expected much more. After greetings, he asked, "Rabbi, where are your things?" And the rabbi asked in return, "Well, where are yours?" And the visitor replied, "But Rabbi, I'm only visiting. I'm just passing through." And the master answered, "Well, so am I. So am I." To love fully, to live well, requires us to recognize finally that we do not possess or own anything. Our homes, our cars, our loved ones, not even our own body. Spiritual joy and wisdom do not come through possession, but rather through our capacity to open, to love more fully, and to move and to be free in life. And it's not a lesson to be put off. One great teacher explained it this way: the trouble with you is that you think you have time. We don't know how much time we have. What would it be like to live with the knowledge that this may be our last year, our last week, even our last day? In light of that question, we can choose a path with heart. A path with heart will also include our unique gifts and our creativity. The outer expression of our heart may be to write books, to build buildings, to create ways for people to serve one another. It may be to teach or to garden, to serve food or play music. Whatever we choose, the creations of our life must be grounded in our hearts and a deep and abiding love for them. Our love is the source of all energy to create and to connect. If we act without a connection to the heart, even the greatest things in our life can become dried up, meaningless, even barren. You may remember that some years ago, a series of articles ran in a newspaper about plans to start a sperm bank for Nobel Prize winners. At this time, a concerned feminist wrote to the Boston Globe, pointing out that if there were sperm banks, there would also have to be egg banks. The Boston Globe printed a letter in reply to her from George Wald, himself a Nobel Prize-winning biologist from Harvard University, a gentleman and a man of wisdom at that. George Wald wrote to her, "You're absolutely right. It takes an egg as well as a sperm to start a Nobel laureate. Every one of them has had a mother as well as a father. You can say all you want to fathers, but their contribution to conception is really rather small after all is said and done. But I hope you weren't seriously proposing an egg bank. Nobel laureates aside, there isn't much in the way of starting one technically. There are some problems, but nothing as hard as involved in the other kind of breeder reactors we are working on. But think of a man so vain as to insist on getting a superior egg from an egg bank. Then he has to fertilize it. When it's fertilized, where does he go with it? To his wife? Here, dear, you can hear him saying, I just got this superior egg from an egg bank, and I just fertilized it myself. Will you take care of it now? I can hear her now. I got eggs of my own to worry about. You know what you can do with your superior egg? Go rent a womb. While they're at it, you better rent a room too. See, it just won't work. It just won't work. The truth is that what one really needs to is not Nobel laureates, but love. How do you think one gets to be a Nobel laureate in the first place? Wanting love. That's how. Wanting it so bad, one works all the time and ends up a Nobel laureate. It's a consolation prize. Wanting love so bad, you work all the time to earn it. And you finally get your Nobel Prize, and it turns out to be a consolation prize. I love it. The longing for love and the movement of love is underneath all of our activities. The happiness we discover in life is not about possessing or owning or even understanding. Instead, it is the discovery of this capacity to love, to have a loving, free, and wise relationship with all of life, with the whole spectrum. Such love is not possessive, but arises out of a sense of our own well-being and connection with everything around us. Therefore, it is generous and wakeful, and it loves the freedom of all things. Out of love, our path can lead us to learn to use our gifts to heal and to serve, to create peace around us, to honor the sacred in life, to bless whatever we encounter, and to wish all beings well. Spiritual life may seem complicated, but in essence, it is not. We can find a clarity and a simplicity, even in the midst of this complex world, when we discover that the quality of heart that we bring to life is what matters most. The beloved poet, Ayar Khan, summed this up when he said, "The rain has stopped, the clouds have drifted away, and the weather is clear again. If your heart is pure, then all things in your world are pure. Then the moon and flowers will guide you along the way. All other spiritual teachings are in vain if we cannot love. Even the most exalted states and the most exceptional spiritual accomplishments are unimportant if we cannot be happy in the most basic and ordinary ways. If, with our hearts, we cannot touch one another in the life we've been given. What matters is how we live. And that is why it is so difficult and so important to ask this question of ourselves. Am I living my life fully? Do I live without regret? So that we can say, on whatever day is the end of our lives, yes, I have lived my life. I have lived my path with heart. Enjoy the grace. Thank you. Okay.